And now, the Lowdown, with economist and political strategist Elson Low.
Good evening and welcome to the Lowdown. I'm your host, Elson Low. Thank you for starting your Tuesday night off on a high with Elson Low. Thank you for joining us here on the Lowdown. Folks, we haven't had a show in a few days. On Saturday, of course, we had the General Council of the PNCR, so we didn't have a show. And just wanted to let you know that this Saturday as well, we won't have a show as we've got some further party activities. So in between then, we're going to have our Tuesday shows. We're going to keep going with the Tuesday show, and then we'll bring the Saturday show right back in for you guys. But for now, it's good to be here. Thank you for joining us on the Lowdown. Please share the link. Share that link. Let's give everyone the opportunity to be a part of what we do here. Let's give everyone an opportunity to see this show. We apologize for not being on last Saturday and for the coming Saturday, but nonetheless, we're happy to be here. So share the link. Share the link. Let's give everyone a chance to get in. Let's give everyone a chance to see what is up with the Lowdown. We've got some interesting topics to cover tonight. You know that our Tuesdays are issues in the news, and we've got two big things in the news. That's the $44 billion supplemental budget that the government has passed, that the government has brought out, and we've also got International Day of Indigenous Affairs. So that's a day that I think that is worthy of raising the topic of whether or not Indigenous people in Guyana are happy with the standards of governance that they're receiving, whether they're happy with what they've been receiving in terms of their allocations in the national budget, whether their expectations are being met. So we'll chat about that. We've got a wide range of MPs tonight, actually, who speak on these issues, give their take on some of these issues, all of which are really vital issues, both for small communities and various communities around the country and nationally across the country. Very important issues. We've spoken at length about the cost of living issue before on the Lowdown. We've spoken at length about it, and we're going to have to touch on it again today because the supplemental budget has come out, and that supplemental, folks, is anything but supplemental. It is anything but supplemental. We've got a supplemental budget that does not address the core issues that a supplemental budget really should address. So we're going to talk about that in just a second, folks. So thank you for joining us. Share the link. Welcome to the Lowdown, and we'll get rolling in just a minute. Folks, we're going to talk about cost of living. We're going to talk about Indigenous affairs today. We're going to talk about this supplemental budget. And I'm going to bring up one or two graphs for you that reflect the real struggle that we've been talking about when it comes to cost of living. Just a few graphs to give you a sense of it. Now, we've got MP, the Honorable Christopher Jones will be joining us. We've got MP Cecil Cox will be joining us, MP Vincent Henry, MP Don Hastings. All of these MPs will be joining us to give their take, and we look forward to hearing their perspective on these critical issues. So what we're going to do is we're just going to, we like to start things off nice and light here on the Lowdown. So we're gonna jump into a few of our memes of the week, or funny stories in this case. Some of them are not memes. Some of them are not. But we're gonna jump into that. And we've seen, I don't know if you noticed it on Facebook recently, but there's unfortunately some trouble on the trail to Brazil, where you've seen a road collapse. Let's see if we can get the first images up there, viewers. Okay, so you're seeing a big depression in the road. I don't want to say a sinkhole, but it reminds me of a sinkhole pretty much immediately, right in the road. A big something that I don't think a bus could reasonably cross, or even a tank for that matter. And there you go, another angle on it. The road having completely collapsed. It seems like there may be a creek that's flowing through there, so the road is completely collapsed, and people are not able to actually cross that, folks. Are not able to cross that. That is truly ridiculous, and it again highlights how important it is that we have proper infrastructure in a lot of these hinterland areas. I'm sure that the AMPs who represent our indigenous peoples will have similar sentiments. These roads are not acceptable, and of course, the link between Latam and Georgetown is something that's been spoken about many times. But we are in the PNCR have, I think, a much more comprehensive approach to public policy, and we will be giving a lot of thought and presenting some ambitious plans regarding this particular artery. We see it as very vital, and you will hear our ambitious plans in that regard. So this sinkhole will be a thing of the past. I'll put it to you that way. Let's get the next slide up. So we've got as well some condominiums are being built. I believe these are the one that you're seeing there is supposed to be in Cummings Lodge area. So you've got really 20 million US, very expensive, high-end condominiums for the oil and gas workers and so on. And there's applications out for about 70 of these condominiums. So all across town, you're going to see these things pop up. But what I think is important to note, and what Guyanese perhaps have not caught on to quite yet, is that where you see a high-end condominium pop up, you tend to see other high-end residences pop up. So that entire area, the land value and so on, you would anticipate normal circumstances would adjust based off of these new and expensive buildings being built there, because perhaps someone wants to build another new and expensive building there. What this means, though, is that it is, and this is something that we have been looking at and have drafted, put together policies to address in Guyana. These are the things that you're going to see coming out of the party. We have real concerns that you're going to see some significant shifts in Georgetown and the surrounding areas in terms of the housing situation. You're going to see a lot of these condominiums and these types of buildings built. You're going to see homes focused on servicing the oil and gas sector. And those people who live in the areas may be gradually pushed out as rents rise and so on. We've seen the Private Sector Commission say that rents around Georgetown in certain areas have tripled. Now, Cummins Lodge, I don't believe, is one of the areas that the Private Sector Commission was mentioning. But I believe that now that a high-end condominium is going to be built there, this should raise a question in people living in Cummins Lodge, whether they are the next area that is going to have to pay these high rents. And right next to Cummins Lodge is Sophia. So that should again raise the question as to whether this is what's going to happen to Sophia. It is important for us citizens to recognize, to internalize this. Guyana has more barrels of oil per person than Saudi Arabia. The idea that Georgetown will look anything like it looks right now is a fiction. Now, I'm not saying that the country will develop the way that it's supposed to develop on the PUP. But what I'm saying is we should anticipate changes to what we see, the structure of the economy, the structure of housing, because of a different type of development future. This raises challenges. And you can rest assured, viewers, that the PNCR will have the appropriate policies in place, has done the research, and has developed the appropriate policies so that you will not have to live in a constant state of anxiety about your housing situation because of these higher rents and because of all of these changes. We will address it. We will address it at scale, and we will ensure that Guyanese do not have to live in a situation of great anxiety. This is the first of many housing developments that I'm sure that you're going to see in areas that we may not have considered to be the highest end areas, but because of their location are going to end up being high-end real estate. So this is one, but there's 70 applications out. Not 7 applications, viewers, not 7 applications, 70 applications out for these types of developments. Let's hop across to the next topic, which is a bit related. So this is a meme of the week. So it says, "Just paid the rent. Now I got a place to starve to death." Viewers, we're talking about the housing crisis. We're talking about how the government is doing not nearly enough. They're still pursuing this 100 house there, 100 house there policy. We've seen them spend a considerable amount on housing. Have we seen enough housing built? Have we seen rental prices fall? People are saying that housing is easy to find. Is that what we're seeing? That's not what we're seeing. So this person is saying that they've paid their rent, but now they got a place to starve because on top of the housing crisis, there is a cost of living crisis. Viewers, I don't have to tell you that there's a cost of living crisis. You know this. But I want to return to a couple of charts that we had put out previously. I want to return. So let's get the first chart. So this first chart here shows the price of grains. Right, the price of grains over the course of 2021 heading into 2022. It also shows the price of vegetable oils heading into 2021. Now, this graph, this chart actually comes before the war in Ukraine. So we were already seeing incredibly high prices for vital things that people need to eat. Your cereals, your wheat, and so on. And now we're seeing high prices as well for vegetable oils, that's the cooking oil, all before the war in Ukraine. But of course, the war in Ukraine made everything much, much worse. Now, if we're faced with a situation where that war has made things much worse, where you've seen the prices of all of these goods go through the roof even further, this is already a skyscraper, but it went even further up. Let's bring on the next graph, viewers. Let's bring on the next graph as we try to get a sense of this. Right at the end, you'll see the spike in the price. I believe it's the price of flour. You'll see the spike in the price there, the price of wheat. You see the spike in the price there. That was due to the war in Ukraine. All of these things happened and people suffered for months and months because of difficult circumstances. But in that same time period, Guyana's expected growth moved from around 50% to around 60%. So it accelerated by 10%. 10% growth by itself is a huge amount of growth. But we've seen an acceleration. And viewers, you think that in this supplemental budget, the PPP has now got an opportunity to address the cost of living crisis. This is their chance to do so. Do you think there's anything in this supplemental budget to deal with these things, to deal with the cost of living crisis? Viewers, we're waiting, and there's nothing. Let's bring up the last graph here, and then we'll bring in our guests. So this is a chart which this is a graph which shows, this is a graphic which shows the overall government budget that we ended the year with, and the percent put towards cost of living. Almost nothing. Almost nothing. Cost of living mitigation. Now, there is no cost of living mitigation now in this budget. It's not there. So we've moved from almost nothing to literally nothing. folks, this remains a truly depressing, alarming, worrisome situation. But really what I think is most important is that Guyanese should feel a sense of outrage. How dare the PPP bring out a budget like this after all of the suffering that has happened in the first half of this year? How dare they ignore that and use the people's money for X, Y, and Z? I mean, some things are useful and important, fine. But what is the crisis that needs to be addressed is the cost of living crisis. Folks, we're going to bring in MP Jones here in a second, and he's going to talk a bit about the cost of living crisis. He's going to give you some further perspective on the cost of living crisis, and that will help to, I think, shed further light on it. But it is absurd, it is disturbing, it is alarming that they can bring a budget to Parliament with a straight face that does not address the most severe cost of living crisis we've had in 40 years. This is the highest levels of inflation in 40 years. Folks, we say often the PUP is about friends and family. They don't care about the average person. They're about friends and family. Now you have a budget which shows clearly that they're not interested in the struggle that ordinary Guyanese are facing. They're not interested in that. What they're interested in is the friends and family. And you may say, oh, man, yes, we understand that they're not looking to engage with cost of living, but you can't see they're interested in friends and family. However, we heard the vice president from his own mouth say, Sue is my friend. He gets all the support. Folks, we must treat as a fact that the PUP is interested in friends and family. At least we know that friends get all the support. Oh, hey, the vice president is not denying that he said, if you're a friend, you get all the support. So the evidence, this is evidence now of a budget. No interest in the general population, no interest in how they're doing. But, you know, Sue is my friend. He gets all the support. Folks, we're gonna bring in MP Cox actually and see what his thoughts are on this particular issue. MP Cox, how are you doing tonight?
Hi, Elson. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for having me on your program. I want to say good evening to all your listeners online. And you have very nice topics, I can tell you that.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you too.
Yeah. So I wanted to know what your first thoughts are regarding the supplemental budget or the lack of a supplemental budget. And one of the things that I'll point out as just to kick you off is we've had supplemental budgets that were 20 billion, but this is a $4 billion supplemental budget. And where is the cost of living relief? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yes, Elson. Yes, certainly. Well, like I said last evening, we have become accustomed to seeing this government after having a national budget passed in the parliament for the country, they always come back for a supplemental budget. And so our expectation is that you tell us what programs were executed, what programs are so essential that requires this urgency in supplemental allocation. And so you bring that to us and we can say, yes, these are the things that we're looking forward to. These are the projects that we would commend you for. But I want to refer specifically to the Amerindian Development Fund. And I know you were saying earlier that at this time when things are not going in the favor of citizens of this country, the cost of living is skyrocketing and persons are looking forward to some sort of ease on their pockets. And so they were looking forward to this budget. But let me go back to the Amerindian Development Fund. So the minister, in her justification, I first of all want to say it's good that a large sum is being allocated for hinterland and Amerindian development under the Ministry of Amerindian Affairs. However, though, Elson, I have read through all the articles here. I'm reading the one on Chronicle as I speak to you here, and I'm trying to locate specific things, specific programs and projects in specific region. I'm not seeing any. They're all broad statements coming from the minister. These monies will be distributed equitably. These monies will help in youth development. These monies will help each community and village. These monies will go toward as additional financial resources. And so they're all broad statements, nothing specific. For example, let's say Region 1. Are you gonna engage in, let's say, for example, the processing of the palm heart in its expansion? That's a private company, but are you gonna support the initiative? Because as we speak, the branch in Barbies is about to close or has already been closed. And so those indigenous people who are involved in that sort of economic project, they are now on wondering what's the next move. And so I was asked yesterday afternoon about what long-term economic solutions I would present if I had the opportunity to. And so I want to raise a few here. I said specifically to the person who asked me that question that you can have things, for example, in hinterland communities like the processing of pineapples for jam. I know that was on card under the AP and UAFC while in government. There is a
Yeah,
processing of the cassava.
yeah,
I know Moruca has benefited from such project. There is a processing of crab, I think, and one of the community benefited from that was the Arukamot community. And so you have those initiatives. We are not seeing that. The minister is not telling us that these are similarities in her thinking. So what we're saying again, these are just large sums of money being doled out there to ministries, and there is no specific plan. And in these times when things are not going according to what the people like, or then you should be bringing something better for them. And
well,
so it's
one thing I found to be interesting, and I don't know if you want to comment on this, is that the allocation is on the capital rather than current. So current allocation would be for immediate relief. So whether that might be salaries, whether that might be a cash grant, whether that might be something related to cost of living. But a capital expenditure would be like a building or something more lasting, etc. And I found that surprising because, again, it seems to me, and I could be wrong, that we're in a cost of living crisis and that it is severe in many hinterland communities. So I found that to be quite surprising. I don't know that they're going to actually build out or actually provide relief to deal with the current issues, or is this is just a budget that will be used by the government to help out some friends and family? I don't know if if that's something that concerns you as well.
well, you rightly said they are in capital expenditure. So again, it begs a number of questions. What are these capital projects that will be undertaken within now and by the end of this year?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so I am saying the answers are not provided. We try to read all the articles. I look back at the questions and
yeah,
answer segments at, that took place yesterday in the National Assembly,
yeah,
and still the answers are not coming.
yeah,
So that's,
yeah.
you're on point.
Yeah, so one of the things I wanted to ask as well is, does a situation where we don't have clarity as to how the funds are going to be used, does that provide the government with leeway to engage in the friends and family approach? I don't know if that's something that you might be concerned about, because if we knew, as an example, that there was going to be a road in X area or Y area, maybe that would be subject to more scrutiny if we knew it in advance that this is the idea. I started off this program with I don't know if you caught it, with an image of a road that had given away on the let them to Georgetown on the trail there. I don't know if we can get another get that image up again. But it seems to me that if you are genuine and focused as a government, you would have these things at the heart of your policy and subject. There's no reason to hide from scrutiny when it comes to these things. No reason not to explain yourself. If you bring up the image of the collapsed road, I think that will help viewers to get a sense of it. There we go. There we go. It once was a road and now it's a creek. Uh, and because I don't know if this fills you with distress, the way that I'm sure that it fills a lot of Guyanese with distress. And if the lack of clarity about how these funds are used makes you think that we're going to continue to see, situations like this rather than the funds being used concretely to move things forward.
Most definitely. So, like I said earlier, these are the things we look forward to. So, if you go to the National Assembly as a minister, you have obviously have specific responsibilities for the community. and you tell us that these are the things you will address immediately, well, then certainly these are the things we're looking forward to.
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
said distress. This is just one in Region 9, and I can tell you Region 1 has its own share of this.
yeah,
Region 8,
yeah,
similar, and I'm sure Region
yeah,
7, from
yeah,
Bartica to the Latham Trail, I'm
yeah,
sure there is some sort of this distress there as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a show and we'll title it "The Bad Roads of Guyana" because there's quite a few, and sometimes you see some videos with trucks that are caught in these absurd situations where they gotta winch out and the mud and the water. It's unbelievable the state of the roads. And rather than having some concrete proposals how
Yes.
they're gonna deal with these things, I guess we're just gonna have to wait on proper roads until the coalition comes in. That's the way that the PvP seems to be approaching this thing. We're gonna bring in
I
MP Jones in a second. There, we're gonna bring him in a second. Chris, are you there?
Yes, I am. Good evening.
All
Good evening,
right.
guys.
Good
Good
evening, Chris.
night. Good night. We were just
Apologies for the.
talking, first of all, about the cost of living issue, and then second of all, about the ambiguity in the budget as to how funds are going to be used. I don't know if you want to comment on one or the other, and which one you wanted to comment on first.
Right. Well, I think most of the colleagues started out the series of engagements as it relates to the supplementary budget last Saturday. And essentially, as they all mentioned, is that in the $44 billion supplementary, it adds no relief to the average Guyanese. It brings no relief to the high cost of living that is being felt across the length and breadth of the country.
Yeah,
This is a continuation of use of taxpayers' money for our own personal gains. It is a slush fund. None of the allocation speaks to any of the reliefs of to bring relief to the people of Guyana. It speaks
yeah,
nothing about that.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. I found it to be interesting, and that this is a time of plenty. The country's growth has accelerated. The oil money, this is a high oil price throughout the year, high oil price, things going. But I guess ordinary Guyanese are just going to have to pay more at the pump and not benefit from any kind of relief. What does that say to you about the way that the PvP is looking to govern this country?
But you see, again, Elson, the way the PvP is governing the country is the exact way that they did during the 23 years. And that's why the Guyanese people essentially oust them in 2015, is that where it concerns people and personal development and people's ability to take care of themselves and family, that is on the back burner. But where it comes to the allocation of hundreds of multi-million-dollar contracts to friends and people associated with the PPP, that is where their priority lies. I remind your viewers again that this is now 2.5 years, thereabouts, since the 2 years since the PPP has been in office. And to date, the public servants, who are the largest workforce in this country, is yet to receive an increase in wages and salary. And whereas under the APNU AFC government, they enjoyed every single year under the APNU AFC government an increase in wages and salary. What does that tell you? And here it is, you see again that they are making billions of dollar allocation to Gaisuko, a cash-strapped, sinking vessel that they're going to again invest heavily in it. We don't see the sense in it. Again, we raised this point. This is, I think early in this year, there were several billions of dollars, again, that was allocated to Gaisuko. All of us heard recently the recordings of the internal meetings with the CEO and executive members of Gaisuko. And you ask the average Guyanese person if they feel a sense of confidence putting a further 3 point something billion dollars into such an industry that has such a leadership at its helm. And you ask yourself the question, how is it that all the union has been calling for the removal of the CEO.
Yeah.
The opposition has been calling, organization has been calling, the workers there have been calling for the CEO
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
ousted. And the question continues to be asked is, why is it that the People's Progressive Party Civic will keep this individual in place? It's because he has a role and a task that he has to execute for the PPP. It is not by accident, it is all deliberate. So these slush funds that you see continue to be drawn down by the PPP. It goes towards friends and family associated, but not to bring relief to the people of this country. You spoke about the prices in terms of gas at the pump. Currently, the country, like many other parts of the Caribbean, we're experiencing some heat wave, which requires a lot of persons who drive vehicle for a prolonged period that they will require to use an air conditioning unit, which it says burns
Sure.
more fuel and
Yeah.
obviously put you back at the pump. One would
Yeah.
have expected that when they brought this supplementary document to the Parliament on Monday,
Yeah.
taking this into consideration, you would have seen further relief that will bring down the price of fuel at the pump, which will enable people who use the vehicles to use an air conditioning unit inside the vehicles to ensure that the safety of their family. God forbid that we read sometime that somebody died from heat exhaustion and so forth. And then brings the question again too in terms of the homes. Persons, most Guyanese have a fan. They don't normally run it during the day, but of course, because of the heat wave, they will have to do that. You don't see the PPP speaking of any relief to bring to them via reduction at the Guyana Power and Light. And Guyana Power Light, again, too, is one of the beneficiaries of billions of dollars. According to Minister of Finance, it is due to arrears, and he stated that arrears that came into being as far back as during the AP and UAFC government. But I mean, we don't have that document to confirm or deny whether that is so. But what you find strange is that 2 years since the PPP has been into office, and they have brought 3 successive budgets, which they dubbed the largest budgets ever. Every single one of them was the largest budget ever. And noting that they spoke about these arrears that is owed to the Guyana Power and Light, then why wasn't these arrears taken care of either with your first budget, which was the largest budget ever, or your second budget, which was the largest budget ever, larger than the first one, or even the third one, which was considerably larger than any of the budgets that have ever been brought to this country. And of course, again, too, this is budgets that have been brought that has the oil resources within them. So they have more access to resources. But the relief to the people, the increases to wages and salaries of public servants is what we're not seeing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And what is one of the things that is really vital is to get in advance so that public servants can benefit now rather than waiting until the end of the year. Because waiting until the end of the year means that you're going to face the inflation pressure for a whole year. This is the worst cost of living crisis in 40 years. Inflation is at the highest levels across the world for 40 years. And instead of seeing a response, instead of seeing public servants get what they really need to get to carry them through, instead of seeing the broader Guyanese public get what it needs to get to carry it through, you're not seeing that. You're seeing everything but that.
No, but you see again, the reality is that the PPP lives in a bubble, and most of these ministers, they are completely oblivious to the stress of cost of living that the average Guyanese feels. They're completely oblivious to that. They have their chauffeurs, they have the fancy, luxurious vehicles that are paid for by the taxpayers. They have their maids, they have their butlers, they have their gardeners. Their electricity bill is paid for by the taxpayers. Their phone bill, their cell phone charges are paid for by the taxpayers. They don't have to pay a single cent. So they cannot relate to what the average Guyanese is going through. Even though for months, or if not about a year now, that cost of living has been soaring, particularly in the marketplace. And you saw people showing you from time to time that at one point in time they used to use a $22,000 to go to the supermarket to shop for a week's supply, and that same week's supply has now increased to some $33,000 and $35,000 respectively. You see people show you that a size of bora or 2 pounds of
The
potato.
bundles.
Exactly
Yeah.
how the prices have increased and the commodity of itself has been reduced. It was
Yeah.
the APNU AFC opposition in Parliament via Member of Parliament Annette Ferguson in January of this year who brought a motion to address the cost of living that is affecting Guyanese. Now, one would say, well, this, okay, here it is as an opportunity for the PPP to gloat, to show what they have been doing to benefit the Guyanese people, to bring down the relief and so forth, and that the PPP would have been more excited that such a motion would have been brought to the Parliament and give them an opportunity to do their thing, to speak about the amount of relief and all of these cash grants that they claim is the best thing ever. But instead of that, what you saw is a continued deliberate effort to ensure that that motion does not reach the floor of the National Assembly. It took 3 months before we were first told that the motion to address the cost of living in Guyana would have come to the floor. The very day before the sitting of that Parliament, Annette Ferguson received a notice from the Parliament indicating that there was some mistake and the motion needed to be edited. The motion was edited, almost degutted, and it took again another 3 months because there was no sitting of the National Assembly for well over 2 months before that very same motion to come to the floor. So you had a motion that was submitted to address the cost of living, the high cost of living in Guyana, that was brought to the Assembly in January of this year, that took 6 months before it reaches the floor of the National Assembly. And on the day that the motion again was supposed to have been debated in the House is when the Speaker writes Annette Ferguson for the second time, or the third time rather, indicating that there is a mistake in the motion and the motion was not brought to the floor. It is a clear, deliberate attempt. Now, if the PPP is claiming that these cash grants and these handouts is so wonderful and how it would impact and bring relief to the Guyanese people, they should have been happy to have such a motion brought to the National Assembly, of which they had an opportunity to speak about these things. But they know the reality. The PPP is setting Guyanese to become what they like and what they had been doing when they were in office for the 23 years. They're setting Guyanese to become mendicants. They love people to beg them. And then when the pressure becomes so overbearing on people, they come with a cash grant of $20,000 or $25,000, and then they line the people them up at various schools and places where these monies are going to be handed out. And then they have the DPI cameras, they have the cameras from NCN, and all of those affiliate media houses to the government. And then they do these interviews with these people. Of course, Guyanese are feeling the pressure of the cost of living. And if anyone is given a $25,000 or a $50,000 cash grant, persons would be grateful, and they stick the cameras in the face and just to get that soundbite. Oh, they like to thank the government and the minister, and that is played all over, showing people what a wonderful country we live in. That is the PPP. They care less about individuals and people's plight. They care less about the high cost of living that Guyanese are going through every day. They care less about the average public servant who can barely afford to feed their family on a daily basis. They care nothing about that. They're least bothered with that. Once ever so often that they can get a few billion-dollar contracts signed off to some friend or family to them, that one of them are able to get a kickback and a cashback and so forth, they're good. Otherwise than that, they don't give one rear end about the situation in this country.
Yeah, well, that is what is deeply concerning. They've had an opportunity to address the cost of living issue. They've had an opportunity to address it, and they've declined to do anything about it. There was a tiny sliver of money available in the first budget of this year, the main budget of the year, for cost of living mitigation. And now you've come to a supplemental after the whole crisis in Ukraine, which sent everything through the roof. And you've got nothing in the supplemental. This is outrageous. It is an affront to the people of Guyana. And one of the things that we will always make sure that Guyanese have at the back of their mind is this. This time, not long time, Guyana got oil. The country is making money. It is your money. What are they doing with your money? This is a situation where they needed to provide relief. It is not a normal situation. It is an unusual situation. What are they doing with your money? Between this supplemental and the national budget that was passed, the amount of money that the government is spending is about 50% more than the previous year. MP Jones, do you feel like 50% more government works have happened? Does it look to you like 50% more government works have happened? Citizens, do you feel like you're getting 50% more out of the government this year? Or does it feel like the same or less? Where is the money going? Where is citizens' money going? It is not the PPP's money. It is your money. The high oil price is supposed to benefit you, the citizens. And let us recall, the expected oil price at the beginning of the year was to be around 75% over the course of the year. You had a whole war in Ukraine that sent the oil price way beyond $100 a barrel and has been around there, above there in that area for most of the year. So you have a huge surplus. You have a massive benefit, more than anyone expected. But you think as citizens you're seeing a dime of that? For cost of living relief, you're seeing a dime of that extra money that we're making? No. That's the reality of the situation. It's not hard times. It's not, oh, we face difficult situations. It's that they have chosen not to help you. Folks, we're gonna bring back in MP Cox on this issue. And you know, MP Cox, we've talked a lot about the oil money question. We've talked a lot about the oil money question. I want you to what's your perspective on the fact that we are in a situation where the country is making more money than expected, and yet we're not seeing the type of benefits rolled out to the people that we should see. In fact, we've got a budget that's 50% bigger than the last year, but it doesn't feel like there's been any change from a normal budget. I don't know if you have any perspective on this issue, because the issue of oil going forward will be something that we will have to be talking about nonstop. Because ultimately, if you've got a situation where you had an oil price expectation of $75 a barrel, you've got oil way past that most of the year, you clearly have excess funds. Why is none of these excess funds finding its way to the Guyanese people to deal with the cost of living issue?
Most certainly, Elson. So, like you said, we had budgets presented, and so over the last 2 years, we have another budget that is larger, and certainly the oil resources, the oil fund, is responsible for that large increase. As a developing country like ours, the citizens will obviously be looking forward to what is there for us. What is there for us from this large fund that is now being part of the economy of our country? And so when you hear again a supplemental budget is coming to the parliament, the people the people were excited, and I'm sure a lot of them were asking, okay, you did not give us the public servants any increase the official budget presented early in the year. Well, then certainly in the supplemental budget, we look forward to something. And one of my colleagues in parliament, I think it was Amanza, who put it very clear that the government can give every public servant in Guyana at least 10% increase in their salaries. And that will only be accounted, I think it was just over $4 billion. And you have approved more than 44 billion. Why can't you just take 4 billion or 5 billion and then give every public servant a 10% increase across the board in their salaries? That's one thing that the people would have been looking forward to. Secondly, they are looking forward to more measures that will actually help them in this high cost of living crisis. And so I know the government will say we have cash grant. We are giving out cash grant for school children. We're giving out cash grant for fisher folks. We're giving out cash grant to all households in the hinterland communities. and different things like those. I said last night on Natasha's program that we are looking forward to sustainability. You give us cash grant, that is for a time. Yeah, we go, we shop for our school children, and that's done. But how are you prepared as a government to ensure that money stays within the pocket of these ordinary citizens? And it one solution is simply giving the people an increase in their salaries, because it means that they will have more disposable income at the end of each month as the year progresses.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That is something, a measure that is obvious and that will have a huge positive effect. Another measure that is obvious is they've talked about making the University of Guyana free, but we're not seeing any action at all. That would easily remove the expenses that so many thousands of citizens face around this time. Get ready to go to UG. That's a big expense. When will the University of Guyana be made free? That's only that's only about a $4 billion to make it free. So very
Another
doable. Yeah,
exactly,
and this
sorry,
is the time. This supplemental could easily have covered the University of Guyana to make it free, and that would have
with
provided
ease,
a relief.
Elson.
Yeah,
Exactly, with ease.
yeah,
It's like
yeah. It would have
taking
been very easy.
pocket change from the from this supplemental budget and just create free education at the university level.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It could easily have been done. You round it up to 50 billion, boom, you have the free University of Guyana. Or you could have
Yeah.
adjusted the budget. But that is the point of it is they say, oh, we're going to do something about UG. Years pass, nothing is done. Maybe at the end, right at the end, when they think an election is about to happen, then they'll say, oh, we'll make it free now. Meanwhile, during the difficult circumstances,
Mhm.
you still have to pay these UG fees. And of course, I'll humbly remind your
Exactly.
viewers, the Constitution says that it's supposed to be free. Because what the Constitution says. So that is, that's at the
It
heart
was
of,
free.
and it was free. It's the PPP that made it an institution where you have to pay. But that is something that we will
Yes.
address. That is something that we will address. This is a great injustice and needs to be sorted out. And in the midst of this cost of living crisis, it would have been an easy thing to do. But the government is not interested in those types of solutions. On the other hand, you've talked a bit about cash grants and so on. And we in the PNCR have said that we have a policy of salary top-ups to help to bring people out of poverty, to help to ensure that everyone is living comfortably. So you get some extra money on top of your salary, and that will help you every month, not just one-offs, not just something that you get once and it's done, but every month that will help you to move forward. And I'll tell you what one of the benefits of these types of programs will be. If you want to take out a business loan and you're getting a top up on your salary as it stands, you can show, or well, I have income that's coming in. I'm going to be doing this side business. You can take out a loan. You can't take out a loan if you have a one-off cash grant. If you need to get a form of transportation like a car so that you can take care of your family, you can take out a loan if you're getting regular income to get that car for your family. But if they're giving you a 25,000 once in a blue moon, you cannot access a loan. And that means that your wealth, your ability to move your life forward is limited. Folks, once the PNCR is in office, pretty much immediately, huge numbers of Guyanese will be lifted out of poverty. Will be lifted out of poverty. We have a robust policy when it comes to distributing the nation's resources because we believe that inequality is a problem, because we believe that Guyanese should be living above the poverty line, should not be living hand to mouth, as we say, because we believe that Guyanese deserve a better future. What we are seeing right now is a half-hearted attempt, or no attempt, to actually bring Guyanese out of poverty and ensure that these difficult times are dealt with. Nothing. We're not seeing that from the government. Rather, they're allowing people to suffer from the cost of living woe without any end in sight. I'm gonna bring Chris back in to give a few remarks as we wind the program down a bit. Are you looking forward to seeing any further measures, or do you think that this supplemental is evidence of the type of governance that we should anticipate over the course of the rest of the year? We've seen them miss a golden opportunity to make the University of Guyana free, just as students are heading back to school. Of course, you and I on the previous shows have talked about student stipends and other things that university students should get to help them to be able to study effectively and come out with their degrees.
Well, firstly, Elson, the supplementary budget that we saw is no relief. It's no relief to no one. It's just more monies for the boys. This supplementary paper has nothing to do with the average Guyanese. It has nothing to do with the Guyanese who are finding it difficult every day to sustain their families. It has nothing to do with the public servants who are the largest workforce of this country, who are essentially the backbone of this country, who are essentially the people in which the PPP in their manifesto going into the elections spoke about significant increases in wages and salary for public servants. And to this day, 2 years after, successive budgets that they boast is the biggest budget ever has absolutely nothing to do with public servants. That is the reality of the PPP. The PPP doesn't care about people and human development. The PPP doesn't develop the human capital. It's all about friends. Because if you look at the allocations that were made, they speak about infrastructure. Now, infrastructure in any country is most important. We wouldn't doubt that. But of course, at times you have to measure what are your priorities. And as it stands now, the highest cost of living Guyanese are faced with, like many other countries across the world. And we've seen those countries, including the great United States, pass measures to bring relief directly to their people, directly to the people. In this supplementary document, $44 billion, you see no measure speaking about further reduction of value-added tax or removal of VAT. You don't see relief speaking about reduction in terms of fuel or relief in fuel that you will see a reduction in the cost at the pump, because currently people finding it difficult to even drive. These are monies allocated that the PPP is going to use as a slush fund. Now, Elson, you are aware that in the ministries they are what they call the PSIP, essentially a performance report, which tells you how the ministry has been doing or the agency has been doing in terms of expenditure. From the budget that was passed early in the year, there are ministries. Okay, let me put it this way, make it easier. This is the 8th month in the year, and there isn't a single government ministry that has spent 45% of the monies that they receive from the budget.
Wow.
And I want to repeat that. There is the PSIP report for every government ministry and agency. And we are in the 8th month of the year. And to date, there isn't a single government ministry or agency that has spent 45% of the monies that they have received from the budget. What does that mean? And that, compounded with a $44 billion that they just passed on Monday, is that in the last 4 months before this year ends, a note for your viewers is that all of the monies that were allocated in the budget has to be spent out by the latest December 31st, midnight. And as it stands now, we are in the 8th month, and there is no ministry or government agency that has spent 45% of the monies that we don't give them. Your money, your taxpayers' money. So in the last 4 months, what is going to happen? And this is where the thievery kicks in. It's like during this period, like how we would say, oh, well, you know, it's summertime and so forth in those countries. But in Guyana, it's thief in time, right? It's thief in time. So it is deliberate. It's not by accident. It is deliberate that no government ministry or agency to date, 8 months into the year, have spent 45% of the allocations that were given to them by the budget. So in the last 4 months, because they got to spend out this money by December 31st, this is thievery season. So you will see some twisted contracts with millions of dollars allocated. This is where you will find them guys who associated with the party, who claim to be contracted that it could build house, build step, build road. All of them will suddenly be given contracts. You know, contracts left, right, and center. As we note, there is no tendering system currently in operation in this country. Essentially, it's the 3 Bs that determine who gets the contract. The 3 Bs being Brassington, Barrett, and Balgobin. So when you think about this, that there is the tendering process and which you have to go, there's nothing like that. When these 3 fellas decide or determine who will get what, that is how the contracts are allocated. And within this 4 months, you will see a flurry of allocation of contracts and so forth. And this, as how the United States would be in summer, in Guyana, this is thievery. This is the period when they go susu the money, you know? So this part, the $4 billion, this is part now of the susuring of the money.
Well, speaking of Sue, I'll remind your viewers, we've called for an investigation into these allegations, because what Sue is essentially saying is the same thing that MP Jones is saying here, which is that you pay your money and you get your contract and you're laughing on the way to the bank. This needs to be investigated. These are very serious allegations. Today, we had blackouts across most of Guyana. People are complaining. But one of the things that is interesting is that Sue said that they had to pay a big bribe over the hydroelectric project, Amalia. So, if Sue's allegations are true, the reason that you had blackout today, all day long, is because Jagdio's been taking bribes for like 10 years, if that is the truth. So every time you have blackout, until we get an investigation, I want you to ask yourself this question. Is it because Jagdio taking bribes? Is that why? We need an investigation to find out the truth so that we can get some closure on this issue, because it's going to be on Guyanese people's mind from now until the end of time, because these are serious allegations made by a man who lived in a house rented to him by Jagdio next door. Without a man on the road. This is a serious matter. Now, Chris, just to give you a last word as we close off, we're getting to the 8 o'clock hour here. Thank you for coming on, first of all. It's always good to have you on.
Most welcome, and I look forward to continue to be a part of your program.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're going to bring MP Cox back just for a last word. MP Cox, I don't know if you want to share anything else. Of course, today is the International Indigenous Peoples Day. I don't know if you had any other message, and as we close off the program tonight.
Thank you, Elson. Thank you for having us. Well, thank you for having me on your program. I just want to say to all of my Indigenous brothers and sisters, happy International Indigenous Peoples Day. And the team stressed with specific emphasis on women empowerment or women representation, or at least a lot of things around women and so on. So I trust that the women folks in our Indigenous villages will be meaningfully engaged, represented, and certainly ears will be given much attention to. I just want to also say that we trust that in the coming days that the Minister of Amerindian Affairs can actually come out to say what specific benefits will be given to Indigenous people, Indigenous communities from this supplemental budget, and not just use broad words to cover up what is essentially there. And Chris rightly put it, if at this late stage in the year you only spend X amount, which is a very small amount of the national budget, then obviously come down to the year you have to give out contracts with speed to
Scramble.
ensure that exactly, to ensure that these monies are spent. And so this is the season, like Chris said, for thievery. Sadly so.
Well, thank you very much for your insights. Thank you for coming on the program, and it's always good to have you on.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Well, there you have it. You've got a couple of MPs who's given you some perspective, who hopefully have helped you to understand some of these things a little bit better. This is a real tragedy in this country when it comes to the way that resources are being utilized. When we see a severe cost of living crisis and we see no real response to that crisis, when we see the country growing at a tremendous rate, money being made, a high oil price, and we see no response to the crisis, not the response that's required. This is unfortunate, but folks, rest assured the PNCR has got these issues front and center, planning and creating policies that will ensure the Guyanese have the type of life that they really should be having in a country that is booming. And that's the direction that things are going to go. So on that note, I'll say thank you. Thank you for tuning in to the Lowdown. Always good to have you on with us tonight. And we'll catch you again next week, Tuesday.
Thank you for watching our program. See you right back here, same place, same time. And remember, hold the line of battle, comrades. Our victory is sure.